Fall and pumpkins are everywhere. I went a little different and chose a persimmon tree and a crow, which felt very festive and seemed a little more fun to me. Let's get started. So I wanted to keep a sketching mindset for this one, so I'm using a larger brush than we might feel is necessary, and I'm going with the no sketch approach just to keep me really loose. The primary technique I'm going to use is wet on dry. This is going to give me a little more control. Because I don't have a sketch, I can use my paintbrush to essentially outline what I need. So step one is just getting all the shapes in place, and then we can go in and layer on with some of the details that we want to add. I am trying to give the crow some shape. And now for the branches, I want them to be, of course, very loose, but I am adding a little bit of dark as I go for some contrast, and I'm not planning on putting a lot of layering, so this will give me a little bit of interest. And you can see we get some nice wet on wet spraying of or spreading of the paint, which is a nice effect. So here I'm just trying to lay out the areas, and I need to put the persimmon in so I don't cover it up with a branch and have to lift it off. So I'm going in. My paint isn't blending as well as I like here, and that's because of the wet on dry technique. There's not a whole lot of liquid or water there for the pigments to kind of expand to. So I'm going in a little wetter here so that I'm hoping for a little more spread. And I don't want a lot of the detail to be in the background here, so I'm just trying to imply that there's some persimmons on the rest of the tree. My focus is really going to be on that crow and that front persimmon. And here, by dragging water across the branch, I can invite some of the brown to expand up, and that gives a nice dimension to that larger branch that's in the front. And then you can see me using the tip of the brush here. This brush is really nice. It's large, but I can get pretty fine details with the point on that round brush. It's a Princeton Aqua Elite, and it's one of my favorite brushes to use. Another advantage of using this large brush is it will allow me to lay in the background wash without having to, change to another brush. Here I can, as you see, use it and get quite a bit of water on it and get a lot of spread quickly, which is what I'm looking for here since I didn't do a flat wash in the background. And I do like, again, keeping in mind this is sort of a sketchy painting and I have very brushy marks. I like that I'm continuing that in the background. So now I'm rounding out the layout because, I have a lot of branches on that left side. I needed to, convey that it's in the middle of a persimmon tree here. So I added a few more of those, but I'm staying clear of that area while I put the background wash in so I don't just smear the brown around. And I'm being careful, somewhat careful, not to go too much onto the other shapes here. So you saw me lifting off when you put the background in, otherwise it leaves kind of a stain. So here I got a little bit of smudge, but it's okay. And I want, again, to continue with the sort of brushy feel. You can see I'm going in with a bit of an uneven wash for that super painterly kind of style. And that'll go along with the persimmons that didn't blend as well. And now I changed to a smaller brush because I'm going in with those top layers. I need to convey or illustrate that the crow is full of feathers of different sizes, and this will allow me to add more of those details. And the eye, while not very evident, it is there, so I added it, and I can go in later with some gouache to have it pop out a little since I didn't mask it or preserve that area. But here I'm using a dry brush effect with my small brush to get those very fine little feathers. And it will allow me too to give contour or shape to the crow based on where I'm putting the marks, which direction they're going down. And here I'm adding the claw talon because I, again, didn't mask it off. So I'm going in just a little heavier with the dark and then continuing that feathery effect on the bottom tail using the tip of the small brush for those very sharp lines. And the contrast between the sharp line and the softer blended is a very nice combination, in my opinion, for watercolor. So I want the beak to pop out a little, so I'm doing our usual trick of going in darker behind to make it pop off a little more. And I'm seeing that I needed to pull the body across a little more so I didn't have a weird white spot there underneath the beak. So I've intensified the color a little bit, added an actual black on top just to get that super sheen that the crows have. You can also do the same kind of thing by adding blue or making it a little more iridescent. Here I'm continuing with my fall palette of kind of the orange and blacks. And now I want the edge of the persimmon to be sharper, so I'm going in darkly with my smaller brush and I'm trying to, create a little more soft blends throughout. As I mentioned earlier, it was kind of sharp and I wanted it to feel a little more round. And then I see in the reference photo there's kind of a highlight here, so I'm attempting to lift it off a little bit. But I'm going in now on top with gouache because the highlights weren't preserved as well as I like. And the trick with gouache is you put it on and then it kind of lightens up. So you have to layer on top unless you go in super opaque. But I like the watery feel of it, so I'm doing our trick of going in darker behind, so that kind of combination of adding the highlight to the top and now here picking areas that are darker will make that persimmon come forward a little bit more. And I mentioned I wanted more detail to be on that persimmon as opposed to the ones that are in the background. So I don't mind spending a little more time here trying to get that right. Plus, I do really enjoy the gouache effect on top of watercolor. It makes that sort of oil painting look, in my opinion, where you get that dramatic, brushy look. So, of course, while the gouache is out, I'm just seeing where else can I make things pop out a little more to add just enough realism without being too much. I want them to be soft and blurry in the background. It's important to continue to look at your reference photo to make sure your layout is balanced. I can see here I'm heavy on the left and I'm lacking some details on the right side, to the right of that persimmon. And I also feel like the wash is, while it's uneven and that was intended, I do need to, again, balance that out. So I'm adding some darker blues for more contrast, and then I can create sort of a balanced mottled effect in the background. And this is not something I see in the reference photo. It's just the style I've applied to this particular painting. So I want to be consistent across the layout. So again, you can see me going on top with more gouache because as it dried, I kind of lost all those highlights. And this is the same exercise of kind of making sure it's balanced. Is the whole value story represented? I can use the gouache mixed in with a little paint to capture the beak and the eye a little bit better. But again, you can see you apply it and then it kind of disappears. So it's kind of a game. It's like, oh, it looks great right now. And then you look back and it's faded a little bit. So again, because it was a no sketch painting, I felt like my proportions were slightly off. So I'm just adding those top details, which kind of help to sell it, sell the realism, that is. And these final little details, they seem sort of abstract or minute, but it's selecting which things are just enough detail to tell the story, but to still keep your painting loose. And so, I'm kind of looking across and going, oh, I missed some contrast here, or I could add a little more detail to the branches. These little spiky marks that I'm adding, they just enhance it. And here's where, that right side needed a little more work. So I'm adding the leaf portion of the persimmon, which is characteristic of the fruit. And, I don't want to be super detailed there, but I did need to balance it out. And I'm feeling like it looks pretty good, so I'm ready to sign. I hope you painted along or will try this style, and let me know in the comments what you think. Are you painting pumpkins, or did you pick something a little different? I'm pretty happy to explore this subject, and in fact, now I want to go taste a persimmon. Have you ever had one? Let me know.